So you've been in your rig for 6 months and you're curious if you should be doing any maintenance. Well, quick answer is yes. But today we're going to dive into the top things you should be doing at your 6-month maintenance window. Welcome back to Miller's in Motion, and the first one right out of the gate, we're going to save you a little bit of what we would normally do, but I can tell you that we would do a very in-depth tank dump and potentially a tank flush. So we're tank flush, we'd actually hire somebody to come out and clean all of our tanks. But what we do every single time, no matter what, is we use Liquified. Again, this stuff will break down pretty much anything that's in there. It's 100% biodegradable, and the best part is it's made in the USA. So Liquified and Matt do sponsor the podcast. We just like the product so much that we wanted to put it in our main videos too. So every time we do a dump, which for us is at least once a week on the black tank side, we use Liquified. And then about every 6 months or so, we'll actually do a tank flush. Between using this product all the time and that about every 6 months, we've never had an issue with any of our tanks. Now, with that being said too, we do full-time. So if you're more of a part-timer, you may not need to do that flush every 6 months. It may be closer to a year. So keep that in mind as we go on. Let's head into our next thing. Okay, well, number 2 is going to be right down here. And a lot of people will look at this and say, you don't have to check it that often because you have the independent suspension. Well, there's a couple things. I'm going to talk about the IS. I'm also going to talk about a standard suspension system while we're down here. But the big thing I'm going to tell you is that we check this almost every time we stop. And I say that it's different checks. So check 1 is going to be to make sure my tires are wearing about the same on both sides and that everything looks like it's in a good working order. Now, because we have the IS, we only have to do maintenance about every 12 months. Or 10,000 to 12,000 miles. So we typically will take it back to MoRide for that because they take everything off, inspect the brake pads, and do all of those types of things. You can do a lot of it yourself, and there is a little Zerk that helps you kind of grease the back end of the IS system to make sure everything's working properly. Now, if you have the CRE 3000, the Alltrek 4000, or any other standard suspension systems, you are going to want to grease this a lot more frequently. Depending on your system, you'll also want to check and see when you should be doing that. On the other side of that is if you also have wet bolt kit, you typically need to grease those every 2,000 miles. Now, with that being said, typically a lot of those have Zerk fittings on them, so you can just get a simple grease gun, plug it up, and then do your maintenance. Make sure to check with the manufacturer of your suspension system on the proper maintenance that you should be doing. All right, while we're still on this side of the RV, another big thing that you definitely want to keep an eye on are going to be your slide seals. Now, there are going to be what we call the bulb seal and then a flap seal. The flap you can see here, the bulb is this bigger section. Typically they're connected. You're going to have an inner and an outer. So this is the outer that you see currently on our main living room slide here. And what you want to do is just make sure that there's no tears and that you're conditioning it every once in a while. We just use good old Pledge. This stuff acts like Teflon to that rubber, and so it goes a long way. Now, the difficult part is you have to get the inside and the out. So we do the outside about once every couple of months. We do the inside about once every 6 months. The inside doesn't get hit quite as hard with all the UV rays, and so we don't have to worry about it quite as often. The outside obviously is getting hit with all this Texas sun that we like to be in. So real simply, what we typically do is I'll take a microfiber cloth, and then I will just spray liberally. So I'll do that liberally, and then I'll start at the very bottom, and then I'll just run my hand up the inside, and then again on the outside. So that does a couple things. It seals everything up nicely. It gives a little bit more of that rubbery texture. It also cleans off any dirt and any impediments that might be blocking your way. And now I can really see if there's any imperfections to that rubber. So you need to be checking your seals a lot more than most people probably do, way more than I thought you should. We actually had to replace some seals on our previous RV because I didn't know this. So now I do it pretty regularly. So another thing you want to be checking on all the time is a lot of your silicone seals. I kind of walk the outer seals about once every couple of months and just visually inspect it. I'll typically bring just a damp cloth with me and wipe it off to get all that road grime off of it and just give it a once over and make sure that there's no areas that potentially could have any water penetration. Now, for a real big one, let's head up on the roof. All right, well, we've made it up onto the roof of our Valor. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest fan of being up here, but it's necessary every once in a while. So what we're looking for up here is just looking for imperfections in the roof line. Because Alliance uses a PVC roof, it actually stays really clean and pretty reflective. So it doesn't get beat up quite as bad as the sun as a lot of other roof systems do. So that helps a little bit, that we don't have to worry quite so much, but we still want to look for certain things. All right, so just glancing around, what I'm looking for is areas of die-core that potentially could have some issues, like nope, that's just mud. That it could potentially have some penetration. I'm always checking up here, so like right here in the corner, you can kind of see where that screw head is. I probably need to hit that with a little bit of die-core, but everything else looks pretty good. So what die-core is a self-leveling sealant. So you can also see how dirty our solar panels are. I definitely need to clean those. We brought some Fort Wilderness stuff back with us, which we can get rid of. Back here with all this space, this is where a lot of solar panels are going to go. So we're hoping we can get some pretty significant paneling going on up here with the new solar install that we're working towards. Something else I always like to look for is when I'm up here, I will actually inspect some of our slide boxes. You can see I may have put my foot there or not. So that piece of tape that's up against the face of the slide on top of the slide box is called a Turnabond. It actually sticks to a lot of stuff. It works out great. We just have to keep an eye on it, just like sealant. If you start to see any holes or punctures or anything along those lines, then you want to come back in and maybe hit it with some more. You don't want to use die-core there necessarily, because that section of the slide box is actually going to rest up against the bulb seal on the inside, and so the bulb seal will scrape that off. So you do want to use an Turnabond. The proper way to redo that would actually be to remove that, go through, clean everything up, make sure everything's in good working order, and then put a new piece of a Turnabond down. I did this on our previous coach just because you do have to do that every so often, and it worked perfectly fine. So, all right, last but not least, while we're up here on the roof, is I will also visually look at the top of our awnings if they're able to come out. Obviously, that's a 50-50 thing, but they are out right now. So I'll take a look, make sure there's nothing kind of funky going on. If they need to be cleaned, this is an opportunity that I'll take to just kind of hose them off. The wind's starting to pick up, so I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to be out. But for now, everything looks great, and that's been a very large blessing, is that if everything is doing good on your RV, you're not going to have to do very much, but you want to make sure and keep an eye on it. That part is super important. All right, let's get down off of this roof, and hopefully, well, let's just get down off this roof. I'm not going to bring any bad juju. Okay, so this tip is a little bit more for our toy hauler people out there. We have a couple of fuel tanks on board. You don't want to leave just a whole bunch of fuel sitting in there idle for a long period of time. Another thing too is generators are designed to function. And so, well, typically what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll just check our levels for the generator and the regular fuel tank. We still have quite a bit of fuel left on board. So in a scenario like this, I may go ahead and turn on the pump a little bit, transfer some fuel just to kind of get the fuel moving a little bit and get the pump working, and just to make sure everything's working properly. I just did this the other day, so I'm not going to worry about doing it today, but just know that keeping an eye on the fuel dispensing system is a really big deal, especially if you're trying to, that we don't carry any toys with us that require fuel. Everything that we use is battery powered, mainly because we don't want to put anything fuel powered in the back of the coach. So even if we were to get a golf cart down the road, it will be an electric golf cart versus a gas golf cart. So this part should go without saying, but I am going to say that one thing that you should always pay attention to, and this is regardless if it's a 6-month thing or an every week thing, is you want to keep your rig clean. And I don't say that in terms of people may judge you because you have a dirty RV, but especially if you have a decal scheme and just the fiberglass, the cleaner you keep your rig, the better off it's going to be. The sidewalls are going to last longer. There will be less deterioration, because every time that you get bugs on your front cap, black streaks down the side of it, all those types of things, all of that will deteriorate your rig faster. So there's a lot of different things you can do to help prevent a lot of that stuff. One of them being you could wax the rig. And now I say that you want to make sure you're using the appropriate wax for your style of RV. If you have full body paint with a clear coat, that's a different style than if you just have, say like us, with an Asdale sidewall with decals. You just have to pay attention to what you can and can't do. Again, check with your manufacturer on what you should and how you should maintain that. Worst case scenario, just a little bit of soap and water goes a long way in making sure we keep our rigs clean, and therefore making them shine a little longer. All right, for this next maintenance thing, we came inside. So there's not a lot to talk about inside as far as the coach goes, besides doing your black tank dump and those types of things. But one of the things we got to talk about, where is it? There it is that AC right there, not the light, the AC behind it. So You should be checking your filters at least every week or two. You don't want your filters to get too clogged up with dust and grime and those types of things, because that will hurt the performance of your air conditioners. So for us with the dogs and us living in here full time, we check them about every 2 weeks. You could, if you don't have dogs, you probably get away with once every month. But it is important to make sure and check that. In addition to that, once a year, you're going to need to service your air conditioner. So I don't do that myself. I'll actually bring in a tech of some kind and let them do it. I could probably do it, but it does involve just kind of having a little bit more knowledge base as far as the tech side, which you can absolutely do. So, all right, one last thing that I do every 6 months, and we're going to head outside for that one too. Okay, last but definitely not least, every 6 months we replace this guy. We did a video about this a little over a year ago. This is your anode rod from your hot water heater. It is essentially a sacrificial lamb. So this goes in your hot water heater, and as different minerals and different things go in to your hot water heater from your water source, they attack this over the metal walls. So a couple of things to note. We do this every 6 months. If you don't use your hot water heater as much, if you're maybe a part-timer, you don't need to do this every 6 months. You could probably get away with doing it once a year or so. At least check it. Something else note too is the ones that we bought came pre-done with thread tape. So you do want to use thread tape for this because it'll ensure a very tight seal to a leak point on your coach. So let's head over to our hot water heater. Okay, this is our 12-gallon DSI Suburban hot water heater. So one thing to note before you dive into doing this and removing it is that if you don't have this turned off, you need to, and you need to let the water cool for a while. So not only are we going to turn off this hot water heater, which we actually did hours ago, I'm also going to turn off the water source. If you don't turn off the water source, it's going to continuously try to fill, which is a problem. So let's get this turned off. So one thing you got to be careful of if you're using a ratchet, make sure you have a deep or a long ratchet, because these little metal pieces can catch you and they don't feel very good. One little trick too, so you don't crush your knuckles against that, is put tension on it, and then you can kind of use a hammer to help loosen it a little bit. And then from there, you just got to be a little careful, because obviously water is going to come out of this at some point. Yeah, you can see the stuff that's already coming out of there. And my little trick is you can take that, so there you go. Ours is only 6 months old, and that's what it looks like. So that's why you want to replace it. I used to have a little flush nozzle that I cannot find anymore. Typically you'd get a water hose, you'd flush it up in there, and you get all this crap out. So for now, we're just going to replace this, and I have to order a new one. And so know that in the next couple of days, I'm going to come back and clean all of that out. So I'm glad I'm doing it. A telltale sign of this is if you start to smell any sort of like sulfur or anything inside of your water system. That is normally a pretty good indicator. If you open this valve back up, it'll allow water to flow easier. Again, just like anything else, it completes that kind of circuit. Oop, and it just closed. All right, and there you have it. So simply all you're going to do is take the new anode rod, get it kind of threaded in there. Be careful not to over thread it. You can actually overdo this a little bit, and also because it's all wet right here now, I didn't think that through. Now I got mud all down the side, because when that came shooting out, hit the ground, I was clear, but I was in the splash zone still. So be careful as the water's coming out. So what'll happen now is we'll turn the water back on, and then we'll fire it up. You got to make sure to let this fill back up before you turn any heating mechanisms back on, because it can burn up the unit if it does not have water in it. So turn some water back on. All right, and just like that, that is it. So we're just replacing the cover back now. And there's one more thing done on our checklist. And there's our little 6-month maintenance check-in on our brand new Alliance Valor 44V14. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. We're super excited because this next Monday morning in real time, I'm leaving without Lauren, which that part kind of sucks, but we're taking a little bit of trip. So come with us as we head back to Central Florida in a very different way. It'll be fun to kind of bring you guys along for a trip that I've been looking forward to for a while. I enjoy spending time with my dad, so my dad and I are taking a little bit of a vacation together for about 4 days. So that'll be fun to bring you guys along. Plus, we're going to shoot the whole thing on that new DJI because I didn't want to haul the big camera around with him. He gets a little more nervous when the camera comes out. So if you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, if you have noticed that for some reason you watch our videos, you're not subscribed, do me a favor, hit that little subscribe button. It goes a long way in helping push this in front of more people. And a big thanks to Liquified for sponsoring this video. See you guys next week from Florida. Bye, Mom.